Should we start? You ready, Wade?
I'm ready to go.
Do. That's our intro. All right. Well, it's actually way better than that. He figures it out. Okay, welcome back to the So Min podcast, where we have you join us on conversations we would have had anyway. Did I do it this time?
Number 7.
I
Jesus.
did it. It took me 7 tries to get that right.
There it is.
I said it at least 12 times on the drive to the studio today. I am Matt Brozick. This is my partner in crime, Wade Abid, and we have a really cool show today because we have a guest who I'm super excited to talk with.
Me too.
And she wore awesome color blue. That's a great blue color.
It's my favorite color.
Outstanding. So we have Dr. Cindra Kamphoff, right? Doctor? Yeah. Do I call you Dr. Kamphoff?
Ph.D.
Or can I call you Cindra?
Cindra.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, good. Well, I want to make sure I'm respectful and all the other things, but
Me too, and that's easier than saying your last name, which is
I know.
just kind of intimidating.
Just like in kids, camp on, camp off.
So, Cindra Ph.D.
So
Player hater
first,
degree.
thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you for taking the
it's
time.
fun.
You and I know each other just a little bit from kind of a mastermind group we did. We were just discussing pre-recording. It's like 4 or 5 years ago that we did that.
I know. I was thinking about it this morning, and it felt like it was like last year. So it just kind of shows you how quickly time goes.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
So Wade, do we have some thank yous that we usually do or something before we start getting into the true grit?
We do, yeah.
Or beyond grit? Sorry.
True grit, either
grit.
way. It's all good. It's grit, you know?
Just a
tried to
shout
do a
out for the True
shameless
Grit.
plug.
It's, the Jake's is occupied. A big shout out to Bolton Mink Studios. So thank you for hosting us. Really appreciate that. Thank you, to Cindra Ph.D. She has a book out, Beyond Grit. Please check it out. I'm sure it's everywhere, Amazon, all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's on Audible. Maybe she read it. Sure it is. Please check it out. Cindra Kamphoff, not Camp On, Ph.D., professor, sports psychology, mental fitness, mental toughness, all that kind of stuff. I think those tags will get you to the book. It is green and white and blue. And you could hold it up right now if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
There you
Perfect.
go. All right. And then a big shout out to Pelican Coolers.
You
who
forgot
still
it.
hasn't
now.
hasn't sponsored us, but we have some letters out there and feelers out there. We want to get a sponsor by Pelican. And what's the angling? Today's angler.
Today's angler, yes.
Today's angler is
Maybe they should sponsor us.
is also on the hit list.
Yes.
So today's angler, congrats on the recent marriage as well.
Yep.
So today's angler, So Men podcast. Let's get you down here and figure it out.
We should have them as a guest.
We should have some.
That's
Scotty.
a really good idea.
Let's have some Scotties on there.
All right, we'll make it happen.
All right.
So back to what we were originally going to talk about. We could talk about fishing if you want. Or
Yeah,
something
we
else,
could. I probably couldn't add much to the conversation, but it'd be fun.
So what we usually do is we talk about a little bit of your background.
Oh,
so,
sure. Okay.
Where are you from? Were you born here? Are you a transplant? Are you originally? Just tell us a little bit about where you're from, where
Sure.
all that background.
Well, I grew up in Sheldon, Iowa, which is
Third guest in a row. From
3
Iowa.
guests in a row from Iowa.
Yep.
Well, we're just
Boom,
like
boom,
cool, right?
Well, we have one in the middle, maybe, right?
Did we? Oh, we had
3
real estate.
total.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So 3 so
That's
far.
wild.
3 or 4.
That's
3 out of
wild.
7.
So I grew up in Iowa, Sheldon, Iowa. It's about an hour or 30 minutes south of the Minnesota border. So pretty close. And then spent 7 years in North Carolina. So that's where I got my master's and my Ph.D. So I ran cross country and track at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls.
Yep.
And then went to grad school in North Carolina. And
Okay. So back up. So you
yep.
went to school out in North Carolina. Like you
Yep.
went to high school or college there?
I got my undergrad degree at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, Iowa.
Yep.
And then my master's and my Ph.D. in North Carolina.
Oh, I see.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So why'd you want to go to Cedar Falls? To run?
To run. My older sister went to Cedar Falls. She went to UNI. And then I was a pretty successful high school cross country and track athlete. Won the state championship my senior year.
So what did you run?
I ran the mile and the half mile and the 2 mile.
Okay.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got different types of scholarships, but I think it was because I was familiar with UNI and I really connected with the coach. She seemed really supportive. I went there, and then it was cool. That's actually how I got interested in sports psychology, just
So
like
can you tell
using
us
the skills
before we
myself.
just go down the chute?
Yeah.
Just kind of like pump the brakes a bit.
Yep.
So can you give people that might not know about UNI,
Yeah.
there is a pretty particular special sports culture, around UNI that I don't think a lot of people, like in the broader, like in the country, know about. It's a pretty fantastic school, for many reasons, but the sports there, pretty much all of them, are D1 level, D1 AA. I mean, they're very there are a lot of quality athletes that come out of there. There's one special story about UNI and a guy bagging groceries.
Know.
But
I know.
can you give some
We can talk
background
about
on that? If you weren't from Sheldon, like why that school is more compelling than it might sound on paper?
Well, there was, is really strong athletically in a lot of different sports. I think when I was in high school, one of my goals was to run Division I, which, for people who don't follow, sports is like the highest level. So I really wanted to become an All-American. And I mean, my dream was to become an Olympic athlete. That didn't happen, mostly because my mind got in my own way, but very talented. Football team is very good, wrestling team. I mean, most teams are very, very strong there. So, and I had different offers, but just chose that because I thought it could be a place where I could really thrive.
Yeah.
So you said you made a comment that your mind got in your own way.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, so I would say I was talented and very gritty. So I worked really hard. And just to kind of give you a snapshot, I remember between my sophomore and junior year, I lived with my sister in New Mexico, and I would run a couple of times a day, right? So generally 60, 70 miles a week. And so when I get to college, my junior year, I'm just fit and just ready to crush it. And remember a month in, I got second in this meet behind an All-American. Her name was Sydney Pounds. Can still picture it.
But
and
don't say names.
don't say names. Well, I can say
So she
her
got
because I
second
didn't work
behind
with her.
Jane Doe.
Yeah.
Jane Doe.
We were instructed not to say any
Sorry,
names,
you
and
can't say any
apparently she's
names.
just dropping them.
So
right
for
off the
people
bat.
that aren't runners or don't
Yeah.
have any idea about if you're putting in 60 or 70 miles a week.
Right.
So what does that mean in the context of, is that running not very much at all? Is it running a ton? Is it somewhere in the middle? Give some context on that kind of training.
Yeah, I think it's, for a Division I athlete, it's, I would say, higher mileage. It just means that you're really committed. You're running, maybe 7 to 10 miles a day, right? And I just remember I was physically ready. And then a week later, after I did really well in that race, I literally dropped out of a race. And what was happening is I was running near the front where I should have been, helping lead my team, and just people started passing me, and
So you're
how your thoughts get in your own
You're
way.
18, 19 at this time?
18, 20.
Yeah, 20. So
20.
Relatively, really pretty young athlete.
Yeah.
As far as getting into the whole, it doesn't matter how old you are, but is this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
25.
So
24. I better 23. I better clarify that.
So it's like in the realm of getting into this kind of thinking as an 18, 19,
Yeah.
20-year-old kid at the time.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a thing.
It wasn't really a thing, right? And people really weren't talking about the mental side of sport as much as they do now. They weren't talking about the mental side of life. There wasn't a lot of self-development, right? And traditionally, it was kind of seen as more, well, if you read a book on mental training, something's wrong with you. Whereas I feel like now it's more accepted, in professional sport. Many teams have sports psychology practitioners in Major League Baseball.
So did
baseball
you know
teams
this
have
at
many.
the time? When you were a kid, you're 18, 19, 20?
Yeah.
Were you thinking to yourself, I'm not mentally tough, or my mental game is not where it needs to be? Or is this a retrospective? You're looking back and criticizing past performance and why it didn't go like you wanted?
Yeah, great question, Wade. I'd say, in high school I felt really mentally tough.
Yeah.
And I think it was because I had a support around me, my parents, my coaches really believed in me. And then it was that I felt like my college career was up and down.
Yeah.
And I would say at the time I knew that. I felt like maybe sometimes my teammates would say, oh, she's just a head case. She can't be consistent. And the thing that was hard is there was no books, there was no podcasts, there was, I did see a sports psychology practitioner, but she was so theoretical that I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that, right? So I felt like I was kind of just struggling on my own. And I would say generally I didn't reach my potential there. I mean, there were times where I really did shine, but, and that's me looking back. I did say that to my college coach a couple years ago, and she was like, "What are you talking about, Cindra?"
Right. So that's the perspective. Like,
Yeah.
well, Cindra, you did great. And you're like,
Yeah.
looking back, when I got my PhD, I thought it's pretty uneven. And that
Yeah.
perspective shift might not be what other folks saw.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so at the time you're there, it's 18, 19, 20. And so do you run the entire time you're there, 3, 4, or 5 years, whatever it is?
Yep, I did.
And then what are you studying at that time? Like what's drawing your interest?
So my interests were around psychology, and I
Okay.
was really interested in sports psychology. So, I started reading more about that and doing some research in that area. So I think,
Okay.
my interest in this field did really grow and started when I was in high school, which 16, 17, I started reading articles about it.
So it's interesting, like last night I'm, doing my normal routine of like go to bed early but wake up at like 1:30
Yeah.
and like not be able to fall asleep. And I'm watching a rerun of Sports Center and they're talking about 2 men's basketball teams that are historically very good teams, like
Okay.
1A, 1B. And they're having really tough seasons, but they have really young teams. So if you look up like Duke right now
Yeah.
and Kentucky,
Yeah.
they're basically like 6-10, 8-6 kind of thing, which is not
tough.
good for those franchises. For some
Right.
places, it's really good. It's a banner year. But, for those places, not so good. And they were talking about, I think something you touch on in your, in your work and your research. Young team, they made this jump from high school
Okay.
as like top-notch prospects.
Yeah.
Right? They're like the best
Yeah.
in the country for Duke and Kentucky, like 1A, 1B, right?
Yeah.
Best kids on the planet, basically, for basketball. But that jump, even from Sheldon to UNI, is tough.
It is tough.
It's tough from wherever they, were out of in high school,
Yeah.
where you're dropping like 40, 25, 10, 6, and 7, and you go to Duke and you lose. And like Coach K is having a losing season, basically.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to make the tournament.
Right.
Because I think the jump's hard.
The jump is hard, and there's so many differences, right? You kind of go from a big fish in a small pond. That's how I felt like in Sheldon, to like a small fish into a really big pond. And, I remember just having all these really big goals my freshman year because, I didn't know any different.
Which is great,
So,
right? Like, I wish I had that now.
Yeah.
Like, didn't know any better. And like, let's go.
Yeah. But mentally, it's tough. I think any kind of transition like that, I'd say college to the pro level can be equally as tough. And just
Yep.
working with a lot of pro athletes, it can be really difficult.
So one question when you talk about not hitting your potential.
Yeah.
So does that still bother you?
It still bothers me. I think it fuels me, though. Like one person, at some point a few years ago, someone said, "You need to do some work around that." And I'm like, "Well, maybe,"
Well,
but
and the
it's
reason-
led me to do what I do.
The reason I say that is
Yeah.
because I played football growing up, and I was like early on, I was like basically 6 foot tall in 6th grade. So like sports were very easy at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you get complacent, and I remember finishing high school not nearly as good of a football player as I could have become.
Yeah.
And it was because I got complacent.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's because my own mind got in my own way.
I know.
Like I had the physical capability of doing it, but
Right.
for some reason I just was too, you got to
Yeah.
probably bleep it out what I was going to say, but you know what I
Sure.
mean? You just, you screw
Yeah.
with your own mind. And
Yeah.
I look back at that, and just like you said, it bothers me, not that it like, I think about it and I'm like, I get worked up about it.
Sure.
But it like you said, it fuels you. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
have that feeling
Yeah.
ever again, where I did something and I half-assed it because I just didn't know what I was doing or whatever.
Yeah, and these moments are called like crucible moments when we look back at them, and they have shaped our perspective, and maybe were difficult moments but helped us. And I think that was a crucible moment for me. Like it was really difficult. I struggled, but I think especially when I go and work with like high school and college teams, it's like, I wish I would have known this. So when I kind of share my struggles, I think people listen.
Because they
Yeah.
can relate to it.
Yeah.
for sure.
You're a human, and we all have flaws, and it's
Yeah.
nice to know that you're not the only fish in that pond at that point. you
Yeah.
know?
So you ran UNI, track the, during your tenure there, and then when you were coming towards the end, like, how did you know you wanted to continue to go to school? Was it degree driven, or was it like path driven?
Yeah. I think I've always got the messages from my parents of like, follow what you're passionate about. And I mean, there really wasn't any other career I considered.
Yep.
It's like, and I also, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, So I think like, I think that's really clear for me, at least, is like my purpose and my passion. And so I had different opportunities to go to different places, but chose North Carolina, again, just because it was a really good school and good
It is a
professors
wonderful
there. Yeah.
Which also, they've recently had a, thing. Coach Williams, if it's UNC Chapel Hill, if that's the place, has had a tough time too. So like the reason I keep bringing up these examples of Duke and Kentucky and UNC is even the places that you think are maybe safe
Sure.
from these kinds of setbacks or from
Yeah.
this kind of coaching or this kind of personal management.
Right.
Even the blue chippers, the best of the damn best,
Yeah.
everybody is vulnerable and has the same issues. So you go there and you're studying your master's degree at UNC, and the weather's better because I've been to
North
UNI.
Carolina. Yeah. Weather's nice there.
And then what did you discover there? Because you're in your early mid-20s, give or take. What was that transfer like? Because now you're even there's a bigger gap from home. Because Sheldon to Cedar Rapids, right?
Cedar Falls.
Excuse me.
I always mix
Yeah.
both those up.
So
Yeah.
Cedar Falls, from Sheldon
Yeah.
to Cedar Falls is how, like far
4
away?
hours, something
Right.
like
and
that.
now you're way over there.
Plane flight.
And so what was that
Yeah.
like?
It in a lot of ways it was really great because I was studying exactly what I really wanted to, and all the classes were around that. My now husband also moved there, right? And so that was helpful because it was
Okay.
like,
You knew him at
had
this point?
support.
You didn't meet there?
nope, we actually met in high school.
Really? In Sheldon?
In Sheldon. So we went to the senior prom together of all
Really?
things.
So this is like the second one maybe.
Yeah, I know. This is exactly the same.
There's some guy following around like, that's the one I want.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go follow her around.
Yeah, they moved all around the country. And
Yeah.
he basically folled her.
Right.
And, yeah. Anyway.
I was
so
like, oh no,
Yeah.
she's real smart. She's getting her master's degree and some kind of D. At Chapel Hill, I don't know. But I'm gonna stick with her.
and what's your husband's name?
Dan.
Dan, that's right. Yep.
Yep.
And he's at what's school? Hoover?
He was at Hoover and just moved this year to Rosa Parks, so
Okay.
he's a principal.
Okay. Yeah, because I run into
Yeah.
him every once in a while with my sister being up there teaching and stuff. Not anymore, really, because world is goofy. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, back to what we were talking
But I
about.
thought to myself the other day, oh my gosh, I've been with him more than half my life. So it's like,
Was that a positive thought, or was
no,
that
it was a really positive
like,
thought.
oh my gosh, I've been with him forever?
Poor guy.
Why can't your name be Jones?
So did you date him all the way through?
No, just
School?
kind of
No?
towards the end.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which means
Yeah.
he kept tabs on you, basically.
He kept tabs on me. He's looking out for me.
He's
yeah.
like, there she goes. She running again.
Yep.
You know,
She'll be by here in about a mile.
right? She's
See her again.
still doing 60, 70. So just like a segue. Do you still run now? Mm-hmm. And so, like, has that continued to be something you've done since
Yeah.
since since
Yeah,
high
yeah.
school?
I would say there's been times where I kind of let it go a little bit, but mostly every morning I run about 5 miles.
Yeah.
And have ran 13 marathons so far.
Yeah.
So not training for anything right now, but my favorite has been the Boston Marathon. I've
Yeah.
ran that I think 5 times. So
Wow.
Yeah.
1/3 of my marathons have been Boston.
Which is kind of like the marathon. I don't know if we could just digress for a second, if that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm 40, and so the context of my kind of running culture
Yeah.
happens at a pretty special time, I think, as far as running goes. marathons were a lot smaller when I was like 5.
Yeah.
So like 35 years ago. Like you could take a bus. You could like run the first couple miles of the marathon, take a bus, and like finish the last 2, and they gave you the medal.
Oh, wow.
Now this is hyperbole, but a woman did this.
I know.
And she recently died, but well, basically they like gave it to her, and she's as fresh as a daisy, like a spring chicken. So what I'm saying is, like in our lifetime, which is kind of a silly, horrible thing to do, but the race is so big now, and racing culture and running culture and all this kind of stuff. They made fun of it in like the Ron Burgundy film because he's going to try yogging. It's like, why? Like, I don't know. Like I forget the punchline, but it's like just something people do. I don't recall people jogging or running when I was growing up.
Yeah,
I don't recall
isn't that
that at all.
interesting? It's definitely grown, and I think there's more and more marathons, and just different types of people run them. That's what I really love about them.
Yeah.
That you don't have to be sort of like this hardcore marathoner.
Like, what was your first 5K? Like, have you done a 5K?
No.
5K? You've run like 90 Ks, 95 Ks.
Just
Tony,
Tony,
Daniel,
you know?
any 5Ks?
I
No.
was a big cross-country and track person too
Right.
in high school.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
awesome, so
So
there we go.
So, and he's probably 27, 28, right? So, I never
Yeah.
heard of a 5K when I was a kid.
Yeah, I didn't either.
They like really didn't exist. It was like, what are you guys gonna do? We're gonna run around and raise some money. It's like, for what? Like, who's gonna pay you to do that? So it's really evolved a lot. So, and you're kind of at the forefront of this kind of modern era of. And please correct me. I'm not trying to use like blunt terms at all.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
sure.
You're at the front end of kind of modern sports psychology.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
I
mean-
think definitely like I'm in the middle of the growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So where are we at now?
Yeah, like
We were getting at we're at UNC, right?
Yep.
Yep.
UNC
And-
Masters, PhD,
Yep.
and then
So you get that.
So I get that, and my husband and I, I'm getting ready to graduate. Actually, I stayed on as faculty for a year, and then we were pregnant with our first son, and we were trying to decide what we were going to do. Are we going to follow his career, my career, and then we're pregnant and we're 20 hours from home, and then it's like, do we want to be closer? So
20 hours from snow and
20 hours from
pretty close to the
snow.
ocean. You're like an hour from the ocean.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
so I can see how that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you came
So,
here.
so we came here.
Right. Good
Yeah,
job.
but it was kind of funny because we would drive from Iowa every Christmas,
Yeah.
be with our family, and from North Carolina. And one Christmas, I remember we got stuck in a big snowstorm on the way here, and then to Iowa, and then on the way back, we made a list of places we would never live. And it was like Minnesota #1, Iowa #2.
Right.
Anyway,
You're talking smack,
now we
talking
live
smart,
here.
going back to North Carolina.
Yeah.
Everybody does that.
Yeah.
It's wherever we're going.
But we lived here now for, let's see, my son is 13, so we lived here for,
Yeah.
close to 13 years.
Okay. So you get you stay on as faculty for a year,
Yep.
and then after that you make the move back to the place, the #1 place you'd never live, and,
Yep.
and you start. And so is Dan,
Yep.
right? So Dan, he's in public education or education in some sense. It's faculty or school or administration, and you come back to Mankato
Yeah.
or come to Mankato, I
Come
guess.
to Mankato.
Really.
Yep.
Why'd you choose
But you
Mankato?
probably raised here from UNI. Some
I
invitational
race
something.
here. I did. I'm surprised. I
Yeah.
did. I raced at the U,
Okay.
at the University of Minnesota. And, when we were looking at, we decided we were going to follow my career. At least I was going to start applying for different faculty jobs, and applied here. And actually the reason I came is because Minnesota State Mankato has a master's degree in sports psychology.
Yes. Yeah.
And I really wanted to lead a master's program.
Mm-hmm.
And now, it's really evolved. When I came, there was maybe like 5 students in the master's program, and
Yeah.
now we have 30 total. And it's one of the best programs in the nation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
think like MSU. I'm not trying to equate the two. If you have problems with my next statement, that's your problem.
Okay.
But I think MSU and UNI do share some.
Yeah.
As far as really top-notch regional programs.
Yeah.
That actually nationally are phenomenal. They just happen to be in the same region. They're really fantastic schools. There's some, so I guess I'm not totally surprised, is what I'm saying. If you kind of got your start at UNI, because I think MSU is very similar in terms of this kind of unexpected quality, faculty education. Because
for sure,
most folks have never heard of MSU or UNI, right?
Right. Sure.
I mean, and that's not like I went to UWP. No one's ever heard of that either.
Yeah.
UMD, no offense. You know what I mean? Go Bulldogs. But most people
today, just for this, because I wanted to make sure that
you know what I mean. Like most folks from New York or
Yep.
Chicago have no idea.
No,
you know, like
they
LA or
don't.
Miami, but
Right.
the schools they're phenomenal, and that's why they always rank in the top. You know, for quality and value and education.
Yeah.
So you came here, and you're doing that, and you've been here since then, right? That's been your
Yeah. Yeah.
Ph.D. and tenure and books and teaching and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so 13 years here. I think one of the moments that really impacted me early on was kind of my first couple of years here. There was faculty cuts at Minnesota State-Mankato, and I thought I was actually going to be one of the faculty that was cut.
Yeah.
And I remember just at that point saying to myself, I don't think even our president knows what sports psychology is.
I don't know.
Like, do people even know? And actually that started, I think really was an important part of my career because I started like writing in the Mankato Free Press and just getting out there a little bit more with how it can help people. And then I think that's evolved to like my business now, what I do, and the writing and books I have and things like that.
Mm-hmm. You know what's really interesting, because I'm a huge fishing nut. Everybody knows that. But what's really interesting from a sports psychology standpoint is my son and I, my 8-year-old, started fishing bass tournaments this year. Now, I'm a big musky fishing nerd, like well beyond. We could have 5 podcasts on that. But the point is,
and half of one anybody would care about.
no one. We'd have just as many. Hey, by the way, we have one fan. By the way, we got a one fan mail today. That's a side note.
Fan mail.
We got one fan mail today for the first time. We have one fan. Anyway, side note.
That's it. Hey, you take the good, man. You run with it.
But the point
This
is
is going to grow from here.
This is going to be great. We're going to have 2 fans in 6 months. It's going to be
Cindra's
amazing.
got a ton of followers. She's going to tell everybody about it.
Exactly.
It's going to be amazing. But the point of it is I had never fished in a tournament before, in a total tournament situation.
Sure.
And I'm a super competitive person. So it's
Okay.
myself and my son against all these other guys who are actually bass guys. And it's
Okay.
like 2 adults per boat, and they know what they're doing. I'm completely spun out like in the first 20 minutes. Like I have backlashed every reel I have. I've screwed it all up. And my son is looking at me like, Dad, what is the problem? Like you normally do this just fine. What is the issue?
Yeah, and like Owen was on like his 9th beer. Yeah. Not good. She's like, I don't care if we catch any grass. Like it's bass, son.
yeah.
He's like, I don't care.
What was so interesting about it is he was so calm about it. We ended up finishing like, what was it, 8th out of 25 boats. But he was the one that turned it around because I was just a total mental head case.
Yeah.
We haven't caught a fish yet. We got to do this. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, super tense.
Just super tense. And he's up at the front and he's like, Dad, I see there's fish right over there. I'm like, okay. So he hops on the trolling motor, brings it over, and puts 2 fish in the boat. And I'm like, okay, we'll do it. But it was, again, it's a dumb example, but it's just one of those things where looking back at it this summer,
Right.
it's like, you're completely physically capable of doing it. There's no
Absolutely.
problem. You have all the capability.
Yeah.
But from a mental standpoint, I
Right.
was totally spun out. And since then have figured it out. And I don't do nearly as terrible, but that was just like individual sports, team sports, anything like that.
Yeah.
Whether it's tournament fishing or it's wrestling or if it's running.
Yeah.
The mental side of things is so incredibly important. And
It is.
like you said, it's focused on now much more
Yep.
than when it was 15, 20, 25 years ago.
And if you ask people, what percentage do you think, mindset plays in performance? And, I know we've talked a lot about sport, but we're talking about performance in everyday life and, performance when you speak or when you lead. I mean, the principles relate to everything. And people will say, well, it's 90% or they'll say 80%, and it's like, I think what I feel like I'm here to do is help them think about how do they train their mind on purpose every day? Because as humans, we do have a negativity bias. Like we're programmed to see the negative, and negative events linger longer. We remember them, right? They store in our memory faster. So it's like, okay, how can we actually train ourselves to not get in our way as much?
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, I just want to confess, like, I have your book. Like when it first came out, I got it.
Thank you, Wade.
It's signed. I read it. I have it. It's at my house.
Awesome.
So don't say.
You have
Thank
at
you,
least
but-
one
but-
fan, Cindra. At least one.
Thank
we just
But don't say
confirmed it
awesome
right
yet.
Because you haven't read it yet?
No, I have read it.
Said yet.
And so I don't want to have an automatic negative thought or an ant.
Oh, see? Wow, there, he's got one of the
Here we go.
concepts.
Here's the problem.
So I know there's 10, give or take, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. So I don't want
great.
to talk about that because
Okay.
that's in your book, and that's a safe. Like let's keep that all the research and profit safe in that book, and the people can learn those lessons. I'm more interested in talking about your path and your journey towards discovering something from being faculty to doing what you're doing now, because it's somewhat different. I mean, what you started out doing in teaching
Yeah.
at the beginning has evolved into something that is beyond research, development, publication, peer-reviewed kind of thing.
Totally.
You've tapped into something which is much more mainstream, and not just all the great work you've done with the athletes, from the NFL and high school and college, but you've tapped into this greater stream.
Yeah.
And so, how did you make that jump from Ph.D., I have a new
Yeah.
baby,
Yeah.
I got this job, I'm trying to teach, and then
And now Adam Thielen wrote the forward.
right,
in
and
your
then you
book.
have a forward for
Yeah, that's
can't
cool.
say names.
Well,
Well, you can
say that. But I got okay with that beforehand.
And so what I'm saying is like
Yeah.
your book. I love the book. I have it. I kept it. You signed it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I'm interested in the transition for you, the human, the person.
Yeah.
How did you get there to where you're like, I'm going to write this. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to have it.
Yeah.
What did you go through to get there?
Well, I'd say the first thing, it was maybe a mental shift on my part. And I think it was like, okay, thinking that I was going to be the faculty that was cut and no one knew who I was or the field. And that started, me on this quest to get out there more with the messages. About 7 years ago, I started on TJ and Lisa's radio show on 93.1. It might have been 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Where every Monday, I have like 5 to 10 minutes where I deliver a message. And
I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was at that point that it was like, okay, how can I, because I think of sports psychology and performance psychology as really like the science of success. It's
Right.
not just like what athletes do. It's like we've looked at what do people do in general to be successul. And I think it was that moment that it was like, okay, how can I make this something that anybody can digest, right? And Wade, I would also say to your question, I think around that time, I did a lot of kind of internal work on why am I here? What purpose do I have? And in 2013, I was at the Boston Marathon bombing.
Yep.
And that was like a really crucible moment for me because I felt like before that I was kind of playing a little small. And, I was like, I don't really know if I'm really living the way I should be living and doing what I should be. So it was like those moments in time where it's like, okay, what do I really want? Yeah. And at that point, I really wanted to write a book, but I didn't know how to do it, and it was scary, But then it's like, okay, get the support, get the publisher, get the feedback, get what do you want to write about? Yeah. And I think it was like through that process of what is important to me and what do I believe is important in performance, which that's really what the book is about.
Was it like a confidence thing? Like, explain to me the confidence, because I'm assuming you didn't just show up you get your PhD and you're like, I'm gonna write a book because darn it, I'm like super smart and super good.
Yeah, I
Like,
wish. I wish.
Explain to me a little bit about
Yeah.
the confidence, because
Yeah.
in a total backstory, you
Yeah.
and I had met and we were in a mastermind group thing, and I remember there was an event that we can't talk about or name because everyone in Minnesota is gonna be mad. But there was a
Yeah.
big like I felt it was confidence in you, in your writing, in yourself, and like
I
that
forgot about
evolved.
Mastermind.
Yeah, the mastermind group.
I keep thinking about like Megamind
Yeah.
from the comic, or like from the TV, like the kids show. He's like the evil villain played by
Awesome.
Will Ferrell. Megamind. I mean,
Well,
he's the
not that.
He's like the big blue head. You know that guy?
Yeah, I know that guy.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. But explain
awesome.
explain the
Yeah.
process of your confidence and how that plays into writing the book and having the confidence to do it and put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm thinking about, when we had that mastermind maybe 5 years ago, I think I was maybe coming into my confidence a little bit, like, and just trying to kind of find my voice a little bit. And there was a time you just reminded me where like somebody I worked with didn't perform very well. And in one of our meetings,
Yep.
I came in and had this like weight on my shoulders.
You could see it. Like it was visible, not physical,
Yeah.
visible. When you walked in, you could just tell that like that weighed so much on you.
Yeah, and I've learned since then to try to do better job at like separating myself from the people I work with. Like I am not their performance, but that was something I had to really learn, because I think sometimes when you work with people, you're so
It's really hard though.
it's so hard
It's so
because you
frickin'
want them to
hard.
do so well,
Right.
but you can't play for them.
It's like
So-
watching your child. It's like you know they
Well,
can
that's
do it
the-
and they fail, and it's like your heart
Yeah.
goes out to them. You know.
Yeah,
Well, that's like, you know,
Yeah.
like when you brought it up, I really, you're at the 2013 Boston Marathon when there's a tragic attack and a bombing.
yeah,
My aunt Cheryl Baker, who probably will watch this podcast,
Hey,
is
Cheryl.
a huge runner, and Cheryl Baker's she's a badass runner, and she's
Nice.
like ran marathons, and she usually qualifies, and I'm probably overstating, but probably not actually. She usually qualifies for like the men's time in her age group, but one below. So she's just
Wow.
she's like
Wow.
incredible.
like I was gonna look up her times and tell them, but she'd probably be really embarrassed or pissed off at me if I do it. But anyway, she's
so she's speedy.
right.
That's what we
She's
know.
a fast, and she's like,
Yeah.
let's just say she was born in '67. Do the math. Super fast,
Awesome.
right?
Super
So,
fast.
So she's there, and she's kind of doing this thing. I'm thinking about that story. You're like, wow, okay, 2013, and she's going, I don't know how to do this. And you're a scholarship D1 athlete, UNI, PhD, UNC, Chapel Hill. It's a pretty good schools. There's all these reasons for you to be confident
Yeah.
and feel good about your ability to produce and to perform academically, athletically, in pretty much all facets of life, right? And still somehow you're like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
like you went to the same school as Michael Jordan, right? I mean, for like so
You should be able to do anything.
right? So there's some parallels, correct?
Sure.
I mean, Mia Hamm went to school there. I mean, like the list goes on,
Yeah.
So, but still, you're like, I can't, I can't do this. But somehow you did, because I'm looking at a part of the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, I think what's helpful for people like who are listening to know is confidence is a fragile thing. It's something that we have to cultivate. I think for some people it comes more natural to others, and we don't always acknowledge, like when you say it like that, PhD, Division I athlete, okay, well, duh, I
Right,
should
right.
be confident all the time, right? But
No,
the
it's like-
thing is like we have this. Actually, on the radio this morning, or Monday, I was talking about how we have like this inner Yoda and this inner Darth Vader. And I was kind of simplifying the parts in our brain where, like, the back part of our brain is our amygdala, and that's the one that's fight or flight, and
Yep.
that's the one that gets activated, especially in COVID.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, this Yoda is like this front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. I was thinking about Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and how they're like just complete Yodas, when they're playing.
Yep, right.
That's why they're so great, right?
I think that's it, right? And your ego's I think the ego's Darth Vader.
The ego is Darth Vader because most of the time it doesn't serve us.
No, it doesn't.
It gets in our way, and then we're just like arrogant. That's what I think.
That's why I take all the shots I can in the back of the head. I try to preserve.
No, you need to keep this.
this safe, you know?
But in some ways, like
Sorry, the
this,
joke was there. It's just
I know, I like it.
No offense to anybody. I'm just kidding.
But in some ways,
yeah.
the back part of our brain, it's really important because in COVID we aren't going out into large gatherings. Like it keeps us safe.
That's
but
why we did
too many
this.
times we activate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seriously, we did this because of what you're describing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have to talk to people.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, mental training is really how do you quiet the mind more often? How do you cultivate your confidence and your motivation and your passion? And those are all things that our brain naturally doesn't do very well.
So how did you get your brain to do it? You're at the bombing, you're like, this is still sticking with me. You're like, I'm not living, what'd you say,
The way
a big life, a full life. I'm not taking a risk. I'm not.
I think I said I felt like I was playing small.
Playing
Yeah, there you
small.
go.
There
Yep.
you go.
Yeah.
So how did there's the bombing in 2014 still happened, right?
It still happened.
So
yeah.
then how did you get
Yeah.
from I'm playing small to what did that look like?
I think for me, I think that time period in my life, I got really clear on what do I think my purpose is. So I read all this, I just did a lot of work on trying to articulate it. And I literally
Any books you
wrote
could share
some big
on
goals.
purpose or what you read at the time that you,
Yeah.
any ones that stick out?
My favorite one was a guy named Richard Leiter, and I actually had him on my podcast called The High Performance Mindset. And
Yeah.
I had him on actually just a couple months ago, and I told him about me reading his book and my experience. It's called The Power of Purpose.
Yeah.
And he doesn't help you like necessarily write a purpose statement, but reading it gave me a lot of clarity on just trying to understand why am I here on this earth, right? And always having this deep passion in sports psychology from a really young age. And then, so I would say that, but I think it actually now is a daily, I think you have to train your mind every day. So for me, it's like a mental morning routine. And then I've started doing like 2 minutes of mindfulness like 5 or 6 times during my day.
But did you do that before the mindfulness movement, or did you like pick it up back in 13, 14? Like did it evolve? Because
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
like the reason I'm
Sure.
pushing back on it
Yeah.
is because I think that we're in this kind of mindfulness minimalism
Yep.
kind of like the whole Zen, Yoda, Buddha, unplug, stay calm and chill, Chaivan. This whole thing really evolved
Yeah.
during this time period. Where like the
Yeah,
whole
for sure.
like,
The
like
last
the
couple,
concept of
since
mindfulness.
13, yeah, for sure.
So so what did you do actively at the time to go so you read like Leiter's book
Yep.
and then you're like, okay, so how do I go from
Yeah.
being, and I'm going to use some words, I'm not trying to make fun of them because I do
No,
them too.
that's okay.
I'm going to be present.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you have to do this or this, or I'm going to go
You have to make a hand
namaste, which,
motion. Yeah.
literally is translated as in, I bow to you, and I do. So I'm going to be present, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be mindful. So how do you get to the point where those can be punchlines? Like, what did you do after you left the race?
I think after the race, what was most important, I mean, it was a tough couple of months when I got back, just probably some post-traumatic stress. But I think for me then the most important thing was like audaciously going after some big goals. Like I really wanted to work for the
Yeah.
Vikings.
Yeah.
And that was scary because I didn't play football, right? And then what? It took me like 90 contacts to get in with the team. So it just meant like continuous. And I wanted to write a book, right? So I just started to go after some big things and I think it means like keeping those goals in mind every day.
Yeah,
Where
I
are you
love that.
going?
We talked about that
Yeah,
in a couple episodes ago about like when your mind just focuses on something,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
amazing how the world just kind of gets out of your way when you
Exactly.
really focus
Yeah,
on
we
it
had,
and you're committed to it.
Was it Bob Miller?
Well, Bob, we talked, and then
Right, Bob.
Dan Sprague a little
Yeah.
bit too.
And so I think that the part that I found harder in adulthood and that I still find hard to this day is a struggle that I can look at like We can hear the fish tank in the background. We're
know.
both looking
Just
at it.
listen to it.
I can clean the fish tank if I want to, right? I can see the very minimal amount of grime on the tank right now because they do a good job
Tony.
here at Bolton
Really
Mink
taking care
Studios.
of that.
But if I wanted to get a little bit off, I know what my task is.
Yeah.
I can go do that. I can see it. Like if I want to run the 60 miles or 70 miles, I can go run them. Life doesn't really work like that. And so how do you figure out ways to do that where you're not gaining yards, where you're not throwing a ball, where you're not cleaning a tank, where you're not, trimming the...
So like you're talking about things that aren't necessarily tangible.
That you can't really, I'm going to jack this much weight. I'm going to run these many miles. How do you get people to understand how to translate those lessons into their actual life? Like be a better husband, be a better parent, be a better professor, be an author. How do we get people to do that without like the lame platitudes that you can go Google? Like, how do we get people to do that without being skeptics or, jerks about it?
Well, I think the tricky part about mindset and mindset training in general, it isn't always something you can measure.
Yeah,
Correct.
I think you measure it by how well you feel like you perform, how on purpose you feel, and are you accomplishing your goals. But one thing I was thinking about, especially because we're recording this in January, I do find that it's really helpful to, write just like 3 goals down for the year. What are your big 3, right? And then how can you align what you do today with those big 3? How could you align what you do this month with your big 3? And I find that people really don't really know what they want.
Yeah.
They haven't even spent time thinking about it. And then if they do, they play pretty
Sorry.
small with it.
Just had a chill down my back.
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's totally the case.
Yep.
That like
Yeah.
80-90% of people have no effing clue what they want to do.
Tomorrow was like today.
Right.
Today was like yesterday. You
Yeah.
just keep moving through. There's no, and like, I remember when I was
It's
talking
tricky.
to a guy, hopefully listens to this. His name is John Benchoof. He asked me one time we were out fishing, and obviously you got to talk about fishing again. And we were just talking about like living life on purpose, like living the day on purpose.
Yeah.
Like I have people that'll tell me they're older than I, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, your life is just gonna fly by," and I'm like, "Yeah, there's some point to that, but I don't necessarily feel that because I intentionally think to myself, like, live this day on purpose. If it's an appointment, if it's a podcast, if it's whatever it is, it's like intentionally making a decision to live that on purpose.
Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't just fly by. You're more in the moment, I think, and more present, like you're talking about. Where you got to do like this or something like that, whatever. But I don't know.
It's a ceremonial thing. I mean, to be in your mind, and I don't have a Ph.D. in any of this shit, but I got
we're
a
like the
JD.
2 dumbest people you've ever talked
Right.
to.
I'm like,
No, not at all.
I'm a stupid lawyer in the middle of nowhere. I swear to God. Like, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
So, but I know what I know through my own life experiences.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to get yourself into a space where you can make it functional for just a regular person, right? It's like,
Right.
So my
Right.
question would be, how do you? Why do you think people aren't willing to? Do you call it introspection? Do you call it like from a goal setting standpoint? They don't want to recognize their successes or failures. Are they afraid of failure? Like what keeps a lot of people from thinking that way?
I think it's because, our brain has evolved over many, many years, and it's here to make sure that we don't walk in front of a car that's driving by, that we get out of danger. It's not really here to keep us on purpose.
yeah.
So why do people not necessarily live their day fully purposeful and present? It's like because they maybe don't even have the awareness that they're not.
'Cause your reptilian brain's kind of a bastard.
Yeah.
And you're like, don't get hit by that car. It's pretty ingrained in there. It's like my favorite part of the brain is the reptilian side, because that's where the swearing comes from. Like if there's a little spot kind of tucked in there
Yeah.
where all the fun words come from. So all like the high level stuff, you get a brain injury, and you're not, maybe you lose the function of most of your speech. they can all still say the F word. It seems like, because they tuck it in real tight, you know. But yeah, you know, like Fran Lebowitz, you know, has a special out right now put on by like Martin Scorsese, and she's talking about the same thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised more people in New York City don't die every day being hit by a car because they're doing this.
Exactly.
And with like handlebars on their knees and a
Yeah.
cup of coffee, and like pretend it's a city.
Yeah.
There's cars, there's death around, so your brain kind of protects you. But I think
Your brain does,
but
for
it hurts
sure.
you too.
I was also thinking about when you're asking, like, why do people not, like, live on purpose? I think sometimes they don't have the support around them.
Yeah.
They don't have, like, the
Yeah, that's a good
knowledge
point.
that this is
Yep.
important. And I think also, you know, it's like maybe somebody has told them something about that they couldn't do it. And then they listened, and then they that limiting story plays through their mind.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know, I feel like I had to overcome some of that own thing. Like, for example, when I, you know, decided I wanted to work for the Vikings, it was like, well, I don't play football. Or when I would tell people I wanted to do it, they'd be like, okay, good luck.
Yeah, good
You
luck,
know,
yeah.
like, yep, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Play a lot of football at UNI or
Yeah.
UNC? Like, no, not really. You're like,
No,
Okay.
are
No.
you the right? I'm gonna
I watched football growing up, but that's
take
not
a
all.
poke, like, you know, take a stab or poke at this, but it's like, you know, you're not exactly a male, right?
Exactly.
Can you do this? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. The brain's the brain. I don't have to do this. Like, do exactly what they do to help them. Like, I have two sons. They have a mom. Newsflash: they're not the same gender. She helps them all the time.
Right.
And we also all use the same bathroom in the same house. It seems to work out just fine. Like, no issue there. So you came back, did introspection, lighter. Any
Yeah.
other books or folks?
I really also like, and I was reading at the time, a book called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are
And,
kind of things that I think I really use to.
So is Jack the chicken noodle for the soup for the soul guy
Yeah.
and the 30 Days to Sobriety and chicken noodle series?
Yep.
Jack Canfield or Campfield, who's a beautiful. I think you can say this about this man. He's got to be like 80.
I had him on my podcast.
He
in
seems like a really
April.
nice guy.
He was awesome,
Yeah.
amazing. Like, he could be super arrogant, you know. But I don't know, maybe 65.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know. I'm not very good at that, gauging people's age. But you know,
But he seemed like a really sweet person from the books and the podcasts I've heard and read. And I did troll you a little bit before we did this on your podcast. So
awesome. Thank
no
you.
offense. But he seemed like a
told
really
you
nice
had a
guy.
fan.
Yeah, super nice guy.
Okay, so you hit the goals, and then what's your path look like? You go, all right, I'm going to contact the Vikings 90 times. I'm going to find, I forget who your publisher ended up being, like when you got there, but so how'd that process look? You were like, I'm going to start emailing Ziggy like every day.
Yeah.
Or like, what does that look, you know?
That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
No, okay.
No, you know how it worked was a couple of different things happened. I met the director of player development, and then actually Adam Thielen. I worked with the Maverick football team.
Yep.
I still work with them here in Mankato. He put in a good word for me, and I just got 2 players to work with, you know, at first, and
that
it's like,
starts.
okay, proven yourself. And I think that kind of happens at the pro level.
Here's the special teams guys. You go make sure they don't screw up the punt. And no, I'm just kidding.
You know, we like this guy. He seems like he's going to be a good player, and he likes her, and they work together well. And I think they can help to develop somebody that has some talent. And then you have this kind of serendipitous relationship that was essentially formed by you doing a crap ton of work, and he happened to. So it's not that it was like it was your effort and your work that produced, I think, really good results.
Yeah.
And you could tell just seeing him walk around campus. It was like me and my wife and my kids were driving down the street after like training camp, and I thought, that guy's got really big calves. Holy crap. That can't be a college player. And it's Adam Thielen walking down the street over by the old Maverick bookstore. Like, one of the last training camps.
Cool.
And then he did what he did.
Yeah.
I mean, which is
It's a really cool story.
which is remarkable. And
There
I can
was-
see why you want to, like, to have that alignment is very special, is what I'm saying. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's
There's
a godsend.
really cool story. So when this was when the first year I started working with the Maverick football team. I think it was like 8 years ago, maybe now. About halfway through this season, the players were having a little difficult time, like moving on from the play,
Yeah.
especially if it was a bad play. And so I talked to the coach about putting a tiny toilet on the sidelines.
This is my favorite Maverick toilet story, by the way.
So it was like this big, right? I mean, small toilets, plastic. I still have it at my house. And players would go over and like flush the toilet if they had to like move on. And the point was like, okay, we need to move on that fast from a mistake, and we need to train our mind to be in the present, literally. And I taught them this strategy called learn, burn, return. That when we make a mistake, we gotta learn from it, and think about what do we do next time, but then literally burn it. And so the burn it just means let it go. And so they thought it was hilarious. And I was talking to the coach last month, and he said, I didn't even know this at the time, but there was a player, Chris Shout, who actually like missed a play. Like, so we didn't have all the players in the game because he was flushing the toilet.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. So, okay.
Not enough men on the field because he's learning, burning, and turning it. Okay.
And I
All
was like,
timeout.
I said to the coach, I was like, were you like cussing my name? You know, he's like, no, I just laughed. You know, it's like, I'm glad that they were moving on. I'm like, oh God, thank goodness. But anyway, so, you know, fast forward to 7 years later, it was when the Vikings were playing the Saints last year during the playoffs, and Adam Thielen fumbled really early on in the game. And I think like literally first quarter for sure. And a ESPN reporter saw him go like this on the sidelines, right? And when he got next play, right back in, like this next play mentality, you know, you're moving on that fast. Like literally we would snap and have fun with it. And later on helped the Vikings set up to win the game.
Yep.
You know, I remember like this 37-yard catch over
He
his
actually
head.
had a
It's gorgeous.
good game.
Yeah.
After some early trouble, if it's the Saints game from last season, I'm thinking.
Yep.
Yeah.
He actually made some key plays down the stretch,
Yeah.
and it turned out okay.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if that's a really crappy like football metaphor for life. Like if it
Good
ends
point.
up right, you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
ends up being
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And don't suffer in the meantime. Just keep doing your job.
Yeah.
Something
That's a
that
good
we
point.
talked.
Don't suffer. I
Right.
think that's important.
Or suffer a lot, but embrace it and make that part of your DNA that you can suffer and you can do it. And like we made some, like he's like, you know, we got Cindra, and I was like, oh wow, that's like a legitimate guest. Holy crap! Like when you know, like you know, and you know, but seriously, I mean, all truth be told, I was like, wow, that's a really great get, and good for awesome, you know. That's amazing.
I'm out
Thank
running
you.
my dog, and I'm like, I'm gonna just text Cindra. Maybe
Right, like,
she's
you wanna do
bored
this?
and needs something
You know,
to do.
so you know, and I was like, I love her, and you know, she came and we did some, you know, she presented to my team, and you know, like I know her story, I read her book, I have her book, and you know, but we were talking about David Goggins,
Oh, yeah.
and I wanted to go. I was like, we got to go Goggins with Cindra.
Can't hurt me. Isn't
Can't
that what
hurt
the name
me,
of his
right?
book?
You
Yeah.
know, his book, and so I
Yeah.
want to go make a shift if we can
Sure.
to more towards this idea of
Can I ask one more question? I got one question for you.
Okay.
yeah.
I often find that there's like a burn the ships moment
Yeah.
with people that are
Yeah.
that put themselves out there.
Yeah.
You know, and for people that don't know, like when I mean burn the ships, it's because I'm a history nerd, history and philosophy student. So when the conquistadors came over from Spain over to Mexico and did a lot of really crazy things, we won't get into that and why that was good or bad. But Cortez basically brings all the guys on the ships because he's going to
Sure.
get the Aztec gold, I think is what he was going to do.
They're always after Aztec gold.
Always after
Yeah.
Aztec gold.
It's
And
the
like
best.
for generations, they couldn't break in and actually get this.
Yeah.
And so Cortez is on the beach and he's going to like rah-rah his troops to go get the gold and do all the bad things they did. But he, instead of rah-rahing the guys like, we're going to be rich, he literally, all he said was burn the ships. And he sent guys out in the ore boats.
Is this when they like walk underneath the like ocean as skeletons? And
No.
that's something different, right?
Different, yeah.
Okay.
But Cortez burnt the ships that the guys came in on. So they were either going to win the Aztec gold or they were going to die. They only had two options.
That's it.
And after generations and generations of these Europeans trying to get this gold, they did it. So that's the burn the ships. That's, for me, it's like that's a term I use all the time. And so was there a burn the ships moment where you're like, you know what? I'm committing. I'm doing this. If it's going to work, great. If I fall flat on my face, great, but I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think burn the ships moments are really important because it's like you're all in.
Great question. Sorry.
Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no plan B.
Yep.
Why have a plan B? Because it distracts from plan A.
Yeah.
At that, like, you have that singular idea.
I think, there's been times where I've felt like that, like I'm doing this and whatever happens, I'm not like detaching myself from the outcome a little bit, or a lot. And I would say, like, when I was writing the book, man, it was really hard. I think it's because it was my first book and it was way longer than I expected it to be. And there were times where I was like, it's like this is crap. Who's going to read this, right? But it's like,
I love that.
Just like, this
Writing
is crap.
is dumb.
No.
Man, why am I doing all this typing?
it was hard.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like literally, I remember mostly because I did it a lot on the weekends and my kids were younger, but I remember my husband playing football on the side in the backyard and I'm like just writing and I'm like, when is this going to ever be done? But now I feel like I have a different perspective. It's a lot easier for me because I went through that.
Yeah.
But for sure.
Was that kind of the book was kind of a
So
burn the
that's your
ships
burn the
moment? You're
ships
just going to
moment.
do it?
That was, and I think when I started my podcast, and it was like 5 years ago when I started it, and it was like, this is it. Like, I'm going to do this no matter what. It doesn't matter. Because I think when you're first starting something like that, you can get really caught up in the numbers and the outcome and who's listening and who's not listening. And it actually is better if you focus on the process.
Yeah, and
Right?
that's why we got the most legit shit we possibly could right out the gate. And we got the most legit guest we could right out of the gate.
Yeah. We had a couple of practice.
And we were just
days,
like going
and now
for
we're-
it. And I was like, let's do that. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
so do you think that you hit the podcast thing early, right on time, or late?
I started it in 2015. I feel like I started it late.
Yeah, because I feel like we were like
Way late.
super late.
Yeah.
But,
But-
maybe in 5 years, maybe
Right.
it'll be different. But I'm glad I started it when I did. And it's been really fun,
I have no complaints. It's been amazing. I mean, I've had a really super duper good time.
Our goal is literally just to have fun, and that's it.
And
And we
so
get to talk
I'm
to
so
people.
happy and thankful. I'm not like trying to close the podcast or anything. I just wanted to like express gratitude in the moment and
You're
say
so kind.
I'm very thankful that you're here and I love that you're here.
That's
And I really mean that 100%.
Okay, so sorry, I had to ask that question.
Sorry.
Let's go back to Goggins now.
So
Oh, Goggins.
okay, so David
right.
Goggins, right? And so the reason
Yeah.
we should have him on here. That would be fun.
Do it.
get the
Try
bleep.
it.
Okay, so get the bleep button like completely
ready.
ready for Goggins.
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
which I'm weird and I got my own little things that, like my own little picadillos and idiosyncrasies and things that make everybody.
I haven't noticed those.
I don't care what you notice. But so for him, he really speaks to me, right? And I don't think it's like a male Navy SEAL
Oh, yeah,
thing
totally.
or not, but I just think the pure message of a dude from Buffalo who's like 300 pounds, got his ass whooped growing up, just like me, and was successful and did things and was able to overcome that.
Yeah.
And like, it's not like he didn't have any struggles. Like he'll tell you. So here's my burn the ships moment. He'll tell you like, he's like, I was a piece of shit. Like he'll flat out say that exactly and use all this different, just a lot of F-bombs and just go for it. Right.
He just says it how it is.
Exactly how it is. Like, he has the joke about, I'll stare at my MFing shoes for 30 minutes before I go.
Yep.
So is there some relational elements of what he's doing or has done through like buds
Yeah.
and through like the ranger training and
Yeah.
through the ultra super marathoning and
Yeah.
the pull-up record and all this stuff? How can we connect the lessons
Yeah.
in your work and research and your writing to something like that? Because I know there are threads that connect,
Yeah.
but the delivery is
Different.
it's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to myself, there are billions of people, in this world. And, I think everybody needs something different. Right. And so there's people who maybe come to me who ask me how do I get out there with my message and who's going to listen anyway? Because David Goggins, everyone listens to David Goggins or whatever. Well, maybe David Goggins, you listen and then you make a change if you listen to David Goggins. Right. But I listen to David Goggins and I don't always make a change. Right. So yeah, right. But the Navy SEAL part is really important. All Navy SEALs go through mental training, and they have people who are trained in sports psychology and mental training and performance psychology that work with them. I just had one Navy SEAL on my podcast, and he was talking about how, in Bud's training, literally they call it the torture moment where you're laying in the water and the ocean is coming up and you're sand everywhere and you have to lay there as long as you can until
until in 43-degree water.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they call that putting out. Like showing out, putting out.
Yeah.
Sand up your ass and can't breathe and it's cold as F. And
I like this Navy SEAL principle called the 40% rule. And I think he actually popularized it.
I think Goggins, either that's his or he ripped it off, but it's
a Navy SEAL principle.
40%.
Yeah, and the idea is that when you're ready to give up, it actually means that you're only 40% done, and you have 60% remaining. It's just your brain telling you that you're done.
Yeah.
So I think, in running and in sport and any kind of project you're working on, it's like when your brain says, "I'm tired," well, you really have more to give.
It's a governor.
Yes. It's trying to keep you alive is really what it's doing. It's the fight or flight type thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can reprogram that and break that for things like mental activity, physical activity, a mix of both.
Yes.
And that can work for, I think you don't have to be like a high performance athlete, a Navy SEAL. You can be, Jane Doe.
Yes.
John Doe, and make these principles work for you in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of that is ultimately you're happier and you feel like you're more on purpose. And then it also to me, in my mind, it's like a preventative mental health issues, right? And I think those are all the reasons why you want to train your brain every day. Yeah.
I know for me, maybe for Daniel or Tony, but if I work my physical body first, then I find my mind will follow that.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of like the path of least resistance mentally. Physically, it's hard, obviously. But I know that by the time I get to a stage in life where I can't take that path, I want to have tools available if I can't run the 60 miles.
Yeah.
Or if I have arthritis in my left shoulder, which I do.
Yeah.
Or my torn MCL on my left knee from 20 years ago is there. And it's bugging me. If I can't find some physical path to mental health, there's got to be this path.
Yeah.
Of, call it mental toughness or
absolutely
callousing your mind. Or there's got to be some connection there where you have to do it that way. If it's meditation, which I meditate as well, but I think there's got to be some connection that you have to find to get there, because you're not going to be able to run, exactly the same way that you do every day. There's got to be some way out.
Well, I find when I run in the morning, it also helps me sets me up for a better day, right? And I think about the research about when you exercise, endorphins, you're releasing endorphins and serotonin, and all those are all, I think people would agree that when you get out there and are physically active, even if it's just walking around the block or getting outside in some way, it helps you feel a lot better.
Isn't that how Goggins started? He literally just walked around the block because he could hardly handle it?
No, I think he was like spraying bugs for some company that
Well, from an exercise standpoint.
I definitely remember.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to name.
He took the ceiling tile off, and the cockroaches fell on him.
So he wanted to go
wow.
and be a SEAL, right?
Yeah.
So he goes down and
And like the guy says to him, you have to lose basically
100 pounds.
in 90 days.
Yeah.
And so he goes and he runs the first time. And this is a guy that's already come through the Air Force.
Yeah, he had already been in the Air Force. Yeah, he had already been
you know.
discharged. Yeah.
So it's kind of like he's back for more. And he's like 20. What's crazy about this is being 40, he's 24 years old. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm finished. I'm 24, I'm finished. It's like, no, you're not. Shut up. Are you freaking kidding me? You can do anything. Mm-hmm. Shut up. But he doesn't know that. And so he goes and he runs like quarter of a mile, an eighth of a mile. And he can't do it. And he goes home and he's like crying on his mom's couch. And he like has a milkshake. And that was the first, and that's the first day.
Wow.
That's not everybody's path. So
And then he didn't quit.
But he didn't quit. So I think that I was most excited about this podcast with you because I know that you help a lot of people, and that it's not just folks that play for the Vikings or in the NFL, but it's every single just regular person that can use this stuff, and it's recorded on this podcast.
Yep.
Like, it's awesome. So I'm thrilled, and I'm totally full of as well, because I have anxiety and depression issues, and like I have ups and downs too, like everybody does.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a game plan for it,
Right.
and you can grind at it and do something every day.
And recognizing it.
And that's why I make my bed nearly every morning. Not every, but nearly. First thing, something all day. And that's from probably like a general I saw on LinkedIn or something. It says make your bed every day. But
yeah,
I think
saw the
Yeah,
same
I
thing.
know what you're talking
but that's
about.
your jam. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's the research says,
Yeah.
if you go do that, then you start your day like, I did that.
Start your day right.
Yeah.
I have this morning routine that I use, and it's that acronym GRIT. And it's just like 1 minute each. G stands for gratitude, like what am I grateful for?
Yeah.
R stands for remember your why or your purpose. Why are you here? I stands for intention. And that's about like, what do you want to do today, right? And how does that fit with your larger goals and bigger goals for the year? And then T, talk to yourself, because I think we need to just be kinder to ourselves. And so many times, I think, especially with COVID and all of our the changes in our lives, like it's easy to tell ourselves all the things we aren't or we can't do instead of what we can and who we are.
Is that why you titled the book Beyond Grit? Or why'd you
Actually,
title?
that acronym came from, so I'm writing my second book now. And that was just a morning routine that I wrote in the first book. Or the second book, I mean. That's one I'm working on right now.
So how was your COVID? Because like the G.
Are we still in it?
Yes, right?
I don't know.
So like
Feels
the G for like gratitude.
Yeah.
I feel like I've like dragged out my gratitude list like repeatedly and like beat it like an old rug. I'm like, I love my wife, I love my kids, I'm healthy, I have a job,
Right.
So
Of
how was
course.
your COVID, and did you use some of your research and friends and family to?
Yeah.
How'd
I think
you do it?
we've all had to in some way. I feel like, when I think back to March when it first happened, I was a little bit in shock. I remember I was recording these like videos every week, and that video was, you could tell I was like really tired and drained. And
Yeah.
I think for me it was because I was watching a lot of news.
Yeah.
And I later read that, like, if you read the news in the first thing in the morning, if you watch it or you read it, you're 40% more likely to report having a bad day.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
So that's why you don't want to read the news in the morning. But, I think in general, I've had to do a lot of gratitude because, last year I was speaking a lot, going places, traveling a lot, and now I'm speaking, doing virtual keynotes at home, teaching from home.
Yeah.
And so we've all had to pivot and adjust. I've just tried to think to myself, well, I have been pivoting and adjusting all my life.
Whole life.
Humans are meant to pivot and adjust. We can pivot and adjust. And, I think resiliency is so important because it's, but managing your own emotions, there's a lot of people that have had a hard time right now because they don't have that social connection and interaction.
So is it weird to be a guest on a podcast when you host one?
I like it. It's much
Okay.
easier.
All right. Okay. It's like it's always like silly to see like Letterman
Yeah.
on like the Carson show, like Letterman and like Johnny's interviewing Letterman, and you're like,
I like that you compared us to Letterman and Johnny.
I do every time. Like, are you really?
He does this every time.
Seriously,
Yeah.
that's my. So, it's like, really, he's asking you questions, or you're asking? Oh, I don't know. Who's like interviewing who? But so your podcast has been out. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called The High Performance Mindset.
Okay.
It's on
HPM.
Apple, Spotify, wherever, everywhere you can get it.
So my next question is, what's the future for Cindra?
Well, so I want to keep on writing books. I really like it, and I think it is a great medium just to help more people. Been doing a lot of like keynote speaking and more executive coaching actually
Yeah.
the last like year.
I thought that might happen for you to like pivot from. Just seems like there's a kind of mainstream national sports. It's not that far of a leap to go to like Fortune
No.
500 type
Yeah.
or CEO executive type.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of the same, like same ego issues that are available to.
Yeah, and people deal with the same problems,
Right.
and we're all human, so our experience as a pro athlete isn't really that much different
It's
than
not,
a CEO.
yeah. Right.
No, so I've been doing a lot more of that, and I really like it. And I think for me, it's just trying to impact more people, like online, or
Yeah.
I have an online course. So it's those are the kind of things that I'm really working towards. There's a school in the cities who's implementing the curriculum of Beyond Grit.
Okay.
So I want to bring it to schools. So I'd say like probably expanding it to business. That's where my next book is going to be written in is
Yeah.
this idea of like Beyond Grit for business, and then how can we also probably means expanding my own team to
Yeah.
get it out there with teachers and schools. And so we're doing some like pre-post measurement of these high schoolers that are going through the curriculum, and so that's pretty cool to know that like
Yeah.
okay that
I'd
in
say
high
that's
school
that's,
you're learning about these principles.
that's an understatement to say it's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
like if you think about folks in our arc of like development, relative to where we are now in our place in time, I would have loved to hear these kinds of messages, and I'm sure your kids are, obviously, and, mine are.
I think they listen most of the time.
But even they like only get like some of it. They're like, I don't know, my mom, they're like a sandpaper company or something. She's
The
really,
other day, my
she's really
son
gritty.
was like, "Mom, don't you know? Control the controllables."
Right,
Oh my gosh.
and you're like, thank you, shut up.
Mom, that's just an automatic negative thought. Okay, thanks, buddy.
That's just an ant. Thanks, got it. We moved back to Minnesota for you.
Yeah.
We were North Carolina. So okay. So what do you like to do though? Like, you're still teaching, professor, teaching, and all that, at MSU, and and many others as well. But what do you actually really enjoy doing? Like, where do you, you had a post the other day about being in flow, right?
Yeah.
And so like that concept of flow is from, late 80s, mid 90s,
Yeah.
about rock climbers at Yosemite that were in flow.
Yeah.
And if I forget the author, and I'll smack my.
Csikszentmihalyi, maybe.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you.
You
Thank you.
he's got all this stuff.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
thank
that's
you.
like
Sorry.
big time that you knew that.
I can see his face, and he's kind of he's a larger man and thinning hair and glasses. Anyway, so check out Miheim, I think is.
Yeah. Great job.
So I think it was like 94, maybe that came out, give or take.
Totally. Yeah, probably literally 94.
So how do we get into flow in our daily lives? And I think people like steps, right? Like if you got, it's like the producer asked Johnny Cash, like if you're going to write one song and then die, like what's
Right.
the song you're going to write? So like
Right.
if you have 3 minutes with somebody, what do you tell them? Like say, hey, you want to get your stuff straightened out?
Yeah.
Or get yourself on a path to feel better. Like it's a miracle we like, nonstick pans and that kind of stuff. Like, what do we say, right? Like, what's our
Yeah.
thing?
So great question. I've been There's a woman, Susan Jackson, who wrote a book called Flow in Sport with Csikszentmihalyi. And I've been talking to her about potentially like writing a book together. So it's kind of cool that you're asking about
is really
flow.
cool. Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But, there are various components of flow, meaning that certain things have to happen for you to experience flow. And flow just means that you're fully in the present moment. You're doing it for intrinsic reasons because you love it. And, athletes would say I was like totally in the zone. It doesn't happen just with athletics. It can happen when we're doing anything.
Yeah.
So, it can only happen when you're fully in the present. You have to let go of, excuse me, especially in sport, like the last play or, in our conversation, the last question, right? But there are prohibitors of flow, one being where we focus on the outcome. In sport, it's like the score or
catching the most bass.
or stats. If you're doing something where people are judging you, it's like, what do the judges think? Or so, and then the second one would be like letting go of the outcome. Second, judging yourself.
Okay.
So, one of the components of flow is when we have what's called a loss of self-consciousness, which basically means like you're not thinking about your thinking, that you're not judging yourself. And I think when I especially work with young people, but all of us, I mean, our judge is like our worst saboteur, meaning like it's our Darth Vader that gets in our way of the most. What will people think, or what if they don't like me, or what if I embarrass myself here? So judging yourself, it does not allow you to get in the flow.
That is interesting when you say thinking about your thinking. I mean, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
When you start thinking about your thinking and you're trying to do something, it doesn't matter if you're working or if you're trying to catch a pass or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're getting in the middle of you being successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I've got sons that are in 6th and 4th grade. And for people that know this film, Enter the Dragon by Bruce Lee, 1973, it's a great film. So you can judge me later for having my 6th and 4th grader watch that. But there's a scene in there where they're taking the boat from I think Hong Kong Harbor out to this island where Mr. Han has this big tournament. And the guy from New Zealand says, he's like, "What's your fighting style?" He's like, Mine is the art of fighting without fighting." And that's the whole reason right there, that scene, is why I wanted my sons to watch the film. And the guy's like, "The art of fighting without fighting." He's like, That's it.
Yeah.
The art of fighting without fighting. I think about that daily. The art of fighting without fighting. Because you're living your...
How does that impact you?
Right.
How does that help you, do you think, by thinking about that?
Your day-to-day life of don't fight against yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
You can compete, but let's just compete. If it's at work or being a parent or being a husband or a spouse, let's compete and do the best we can, and let's let the competition stand on its own.
Yeah.
Don't also compete with yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't need to, unless you have to push for something where your brain's working against you. Otherwise, let's just compete. Let's just go for it and see what happens. And I don't know, there's probably 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 tactics you can use to be successful. You can write a book, be a professor. You can do a podcast. You can show your kids or your spouse things, friends, family, tons of different ways. And once you're in that zone, I think that's when you get to being your best self.
Absolutely.
I just don't think you need to climb Yosemite to get there necessarily.
No, you don't.
And so I think
You
that's
could be in flow
right,
listening
right,
to this podcast.
right. I'm in flow right now. I have no idea what we talked about 20 minutes ago. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a wonderful time. And,
It is interesting you bring that up, because as we go through and proof these, there's sections of the entire conversation I don't even remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm like, we said that?
It's like, wow, I said some really stupid stuff. That joke probably didn't work well, but whatever.
I love that though. The bombing on a podcast. Those have been my favorite parts. where stuff just totally is awful. The jokes suck. Nobody gets your references. The fact that you got some of my references makes me so happy.
I
think
do.
you got more
Like,
of
I
his
would give
references,
you-
I think, than almost
Anybody's
anybody.
like, who the hell is this person? But so like that, and Tony's
Bruce
like,
Lee,
Yep.
you know, and so that's been awesome. But when they bomb, it's just like. So I wanted to ask you.
Let's
you know,
transition.
no one knows what the hell that is. So, like the bombing is the best part. I don't know where we're at for time.
Well, so when's the new book come out?
So I'm hoping to finish it by March.
Okay,
So-
wow. So you're
Yeah, I'm like 80% done.
Wow.
wow. Okay.
So, but then, it takes a while for
Yeah, you have
going
to-
back and forth. I've been doing some kind of cool things where I did some t-shirts, have motivational sayings, and the next thing we're launching is like power phrase cards. They're real. I should have brought them in. They're so incredible. So I hired a artist to help me who lives in Minneapolis, and
Yeah.
they're really cool. So we're calling them Beyond Grit cards.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah. So those are kind of the things I've been working on.
And you
So-
hug your stuff into your editor, and they'll beat it up and
Yeah.
try to think.
But hopefully, like now, after doing it one time, I'll be like, okay, it's always going to be easier
Right.
the second time, right?
That's why we had the second kid. that's why,
So my question is now when we have the second book out and we're available, all of that, would you mind coming back on and talking a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
let's do that. That
This has
sounds
been super
great.
fun.
Well, I think
know,
that
I thank you both for your
you
conversation.
legitimize us is kind of what.
Yeah,
just
we're just really excited that
Right.
someone legitimate is on
right,
here.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, you're nice.
No, it's been fun. So that that's going on. I think you have your podcast. It's HPM, which I think is high.
HPM
Yeah. HPM. It's on Spotify, Apple. High performance
Mindset.
and Beyond Grit is out and has been for a bit. It's in print and online, digital. And the next book is untitled at the present time, but might have more of a business focus.
Yes, it does.
If you would love, I would love to have you come back. If you would come back, we'd
Yeah,
be
that'd be a
grateful
lot of
for it.
fun.
So thank you so much. Cindra Kamphoff,
Not
Ph.D.
camp on.
Not camp on.
on. So
I took
thank
my
you so
husband's
much.
name, so
There you go.
Nobody, there's no judgments here.
no.
But no, thank you for coming to talk to us about this, and I want to just make a special shout out and say thank you for stepping outside of the book, and what I think. I've heard you talk, like various things. So thank you for sharing some of yourself as a person.
Yeah.
And going a bit off script with us. That really
Yeah,
that
thank you.
meant a lot to me, and I'm glad that you trusted us enough to do it. So hopefully,
Yeah, for sure.
we didn't say anything that was embarrassing or too many.
I didn't say anything embarrassing.
I don't
did
think so.
I didn't think it.
Yeah. So,
Did I say anything offensive? I don't know.
No, I didn't. I'm not offended.
but no, but thanks for going there with us, and
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.